Red Dead Redemption 2 is hiding letters that most players will never find. And I'm not talking about quest letters. I'm not talking about the ones the game hands you. I'm talking about notes buried in chests on islands nobody visits, tucked inside chimneys, hidden under floorboards, and folded into the pockets of corpses on riverbanks. Letters that completely rewrite the storylines you thought you already understood. Most players finish Red Dead Redemption 2 and think they got the whole story. They didn't. The developers placed these documents in the world knowing the vast majority of people would walk right past them. Murder confessions, civil war love stories, dying children, mass self-deletion cults, and one mystery so well hidden that players didn't even realize it existed until nearly 7 years after launch. Today, we're going through every single one. The genuinely secret letters of Red Dead Redemption 2. By the end of this, you're going to see this game completely differently. Let's start with the one that breaks the Braithwaite and Gray feud wide open. You remember that storyline. You ride into Rhodes, Hosea runs a con, both families get played against each other. There's a kidnapping, a burning manor, Jack gets taken. Most players chalk it up as a generations-old grudge between two rotten southern dynasties. Two families that just hate each other because that's what they do. But here's what almost everyone misses. Northeast of Saint-Denis, scattered across a chain of small islands in the bayou, there is a tin chest sitting at the foot of a tree. No quest marker, no icon, no reason to be there. Inside is a yellow piece of paper called the Faded Letter. It's dated 1806, written by a woman named Lucille Braithwaite, addressed to a man named Douglas Gray. It's a love letter. Lucille has been exiled to Connecticut by her family for falling in love with the son of their sworn enemy. She writes about how the family's hatred is petty, how she didn't choose to be a Braithwaite any more than he chose to be a Gray. She wants to flee with him to South America or Europe to escape both names entirely. But here's the part that changes everything. Lucille tells Douglas she has left him a stash of gold, and she instructs him to take every last bar of it and donate it to an abolitionist organization lobbying Congress to end the importation of enslaved people into the United States. Then she writes the line that connects it all. She predicts that the families will be so consumed by their feud that they'll just blame each other for the missing gold. And that is exactly what happened. For 80-something years, the Braithwaites accused the Grays. The Greys accused the Braithwaites. That hatred metastasized into a generational war over treasure that wasn't even stolen. It was given away by their own children to fight slavery. But here is the part that makes this genuinely beautiful storytelling. Keep playing the game and trigger the optional mission strand called The Course of True Love. You meet two characters, Penelope Braithwaite and Beau Gray. Same families, same forbidden love, 2 generations later. The cycle is happening all over again. Penelope sends Arthur a letter found on a desk in his tent at Beaver Hollow during Chapter 6, asking him to help her escape with Beau. 2 letters, almost 100 years apart, the same families, the same impossible love, the same tragedy repeating itself. Most players will run the optional mission without ever finding the original letter that gives it weight. Rockstar built an entire multi-generational tragedy and bet that you wouldn't notice. And for most players, they were right. That's the second best thing in this video. Hold on, because we're getting to the best one. But first, let's talk about a dead woman in a cabin and the man who never came home. There's a place called Martha's Swain. Small abandoned cabin in Lemoyne. There's a corpse inside. Most players who stumble across it loot the body and keep moving. They may not even register that the dead woman was Martha. But on the nightstand, there is a letter, dated August 17th, 1864, from a man named Garfield, writing from a Civil War battlefield. Garfield is a Confederate soldier. He writes to Martha that he can't believe he ever signed up to fight. He used to think states' rights were a principle worth dying for, but he has watched too many of his friends get slaughtered for it, and he knows now he was wrong. He says the only thing he's proud of anymore is loving Martha. Then comes a line that should stop you cold. He writes, "You, a Yankee, an abolitionist, everything I'm supposed to hate, and now love so dear. a Confederate soldier, in love with a Northern abolitionist, on opposite sides of the most violent conflict in American history. He tells her he's thought about deserting, but his commanding officer has been shooting deserters on sight. He's afraid he won't survive the upcoming battle. Now, here's the twist nobody finds. Ride to a place called Bulger Glade in Scarlet Meadows. You can find Garfield's body. He is bayoneted to a tree. His skeleton has been there for 30 years. There's a sign hung around his neck, branding him a traitor, and in his pocket is a second letter from Martha, dated 8th of October, 1864. She begs him not to fight. She tells him to run. She calls him a stubborn, pig-headed barbarian and says she loves him. She says, please be a coward. Please come home. He never made it. But at Martha's Swain, that's where her body is in the cabin. She waited for him. He never came. And occasionally, when you're standing inside that cabin, the bedroom door swings open and shut on its own. No quest, no marker, no journal entry. No character ever mentions either of them. You only know this story exists if you walk into a random abandoned cabin and read a piece of paper on a nightstand. That's what this game is doing, constantly, everywhere, and it gets darker. Let's go to the Lanahichi River, not far from Shady Bell. There's a corpse on the shoreline, a black man, dead from exhaustion and exposure. In his pocket is a letter addressed to Uncle Lewis, signed by a man named Elijah. Elijah writes that he just escaped slavery from a plantation owned by the Pennington family. He was recaptured outside Rhodes by a man who chained him to a wall in a shack called Old Harry Fen. You can actually visit Old Harry Fen in the game. It's a real explorable location in southern Lemoyne. Most players never connect it to the letter. Elijah escaped his chains. He was running for Canada to join Uncle Lewis and his cousin Samuel and continue his education. The letter is full of hope. He talks about freedom, about learning, about reuniting with his family. He never made it. His body washed up on the riverbank. The letter never reached anyone. 0 markers. 0 music cues. 0 acknowledgement from any character in the game. This is just there, on the ground, waiting for someone to pick it up. Now we go west, far west, to a small Norwegian settlement called Manzanita Post in the Tall Trees region of West Elizabeth. On the surface, it looks like a quiet background location, a trading post, some cabins, normal frontier life. Walk into one specific cabin and lift a loose floorboard, you find a photograph, a man, a woman, and a small child. The man appears to be of North African descent. On the back of the photograph, written in Norwegian, is a single word with an exclamation mark, Uren. It means unclean. Keep searching the cabin. Inside the chimney, you find a journal page, also in Norwegian. Translated, it reads in part, I hate going to sleep because the only face I see is yours, and all I hear are your screams. Father says it was the only alternative. The moment you touch the journal page, a couple living in the cabin, who were perfectly friendly to you up until that moment, flee in absolute terror. They never come back. There's more. A Norwegian newspaper scrap found on dead bodies elsewhere in the area describe a man, a woman, and a 2-year-old child found beaten and stabbed to death in a Norwegian town called Åstad. The community fled the country to escape prosecution. The father mentioned in the journal was almost certainly a cult leader. The murder was almost certainly motivated by the family's interracial existence. The woman in the cabin is processing the fact that she participated in the killing of her own sister, her brother-in-law, and her 2-year-old niece. This is in a video game about cowboys, and nothing in the game points you to any of it. You have to know to look. Now, if you're finding this as weird as I am, drop a comment below with which letter hit hardest so far, because we still have the most disturbing one to get to. And if you've never seen my breakdowns of other hidden secrets in open world games, there's a video right after this one that's worth your time. But first, let's go to the mountains. There's a small cabin in the Grizzlies West region of Ambrino called Clawson's Rest. The door is locked. Break it in and you find 2 children's corpses. One on the bed, one on the floor beside it. They have been dead for some time. The door was locked from the inside. The windows are boarded shut. On the nightstand is a letter from their mother, addressed to Glenn and Eddie. She writes that she has gone to track down the men who took their family's money. She tells the boys she's locked them inside for their safety. She tells them not to answer the door for anyone, even people they think they know. She says there's enough food and water for 4 days. She expects to be home by tomorrow night. She never came back. Glenn and Eddie waited as long as they could. And then they died. Locked inside the only place their mother thought was safe. Now here's the part that takes this from devastating into something else entirely. When data miners pulled apart the game's files, they found cut content. The boys were originally supposed to be alive when the player arrived. The mission was going to give Arthur an objective: ask the children to leave the shack, take the children to Valentine, take the children to the sheriff. You were supposed to be able to save them. The developers built it, and then, for whatever reason, they cut it. So in the final version of the game, you walk in, you read the letter, you understand exactly what happened, and there is nothing you can do. The game doesn't acknowledge it. Arthur doesn't say anything. You just leave. Now, let's talk about 11 dead people in matching boots. Just east of Valentine, there's an abandoned shack called Hanny's Bethel. Walk inside and you find 11 corpses, all wearing the same boots, lying in the same position, surrounded by burnt out candles and old religious objects. It's addressed to the followers of a deity called Kuhkowaba, voyager of time and galaxies. The sermon instructs the congregation to leave behind their earthly bodies so they can ascend and join Kuhkowaba on his celestial journey. This is almost certainly a Heaven's Gate reference, the real-world cult whose members committed mass suicide in 1997, believing a spacecraft was following the Hale-Bopp comet. But here's what makes it more than just a reference. Return to Hanny's Bethel at 2 a.m. under a half moon. Look up. There's a UFO hovering above the shack. It appears for a few minutes and then vanishes. The cult wasn't wrong about the spacecraft. It just came after they were already dead. Rockstar hid a reward for finding the cult, and almost nobody ever sees it. There is also a letter found on a dying man near a shipwreck on the Flatiron Lake shoreline close to Flatneck Station. The man is barely alive. He's clutching a letter addressed to Bonnie MacFarlane. If you played the original Red Dead Redemption, you know that name. Bonnie was one of the most beloved characters in the first game. This letter is a direct message from the developers to longtime fans, a wink across a decade of storytelling. Most new players pick it up, have no idea who Bonnie is, and move on. For anyone who played Red Dead Redemption 1, it lands completely differently. Now, we need to talk about the spider. This is the one that broke the internet in December 2025. Nearly 7 years after the game had officially launched. And it might be the most elaborate secret Rockstar has put into any one of their games. A player noticed a spider symbol carved into a telegraph pole, just one, in the middle of nowhere. If you map that symbol onto the game world, it produces an 8-legged web pattern that lines up with real telegraph poles scattered across the map. At each point on that web sits a hidden spider web, but they only appear between 3 and 4 a.m. in game time. If you show up at any other hour, there's nothing there. That's already wild, but it keeps going. At the center of the web pattern, there's a tree, and in that tree is another spider web, only visible between 1 and 2 a.m. Inside the web are inscriptions, directional markers, symbols that translate to 5 poles west and northwest, and a guitar symbol. Follow the trail, it leads to Fort Wallace, where 2 guitars are sitting. Then it leads to the Wapiti Indian Reservation. Players are still mapping this out. The full endpoint hasn't been confirmed, but a former Rockstar developer has acknowledged that this secret was deliberately placed and was meant to stay hidden, and some researchers believe it may connect to the unsolved Mount Chiliad mystery in GTA 5, which has been one of gaming's most discussed conspiracies for over a decade. Think about that. Rockstar may have built a secret that spans 2 separate games, sat dormant for 7 years, and still is not fully solved. This is why people never stop playing these games. Here's what all of these letters have in common. None of them are accidents. Every single one of these was written, placed, and hidden by a development team that knew the vast majority of players would never even find them. They didn't need you to find them. They built them anyway, because that's the kind of game Red Dead Redemption 2 is. The world isn't a backdrop, it's a document. Every cabin, every corpse, every folded piece of paper is part of a story that exists whether you discover it or not. The faded letter rewrites an 8-year feud as a tragedy of forbidden love and hidden generosity. Garfield and Martha are a Civil War love story that ends with a skeleton bayoneted to a tree and a woman who waited in a cabin until she couldn't anymore. Elijah precious letter is a story of hope found in a dead man's pocket on a riverbank. Glenn and Eddie are two children who died waiting for a mother who was never coming back. The Norwegian documents in Manzinata Post are a confession to a religiously motivated murder that an entire community committed and then fled across an ocean to escape. And the spiderweb mystery is still being unraveled right now by players who have been searching this game for 7 years and still aren't done. You thought you knew Red Dead Redemption 2? Well, you didn't. And here's the thing, there are almost certainly more. Rockstar built this world with a level of detail that no team has ever matched, which means somewhere out there's probably a letter nobody has found yet, a story sitting in the dark, waiting. If you've found something in this game that I didn't cover, put it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to keep going down this rabbit hole, the next video covers secrets in open-world games that were confirmed as intentional by developers, but never fully explained. It's sitting right there. You're already here, you might as well. And subscribe if you want more of this. No fluff, just the good stuff. Every time.